This SoonerScoop.com video is streaming in crystal clear 4K resolution on YouTube thanks to Enjoy Vision in Oklahoma City. From the big plays to life's everyday moments, see it all in sharp focus with LASIK at Enjoy Vision. Enjoy Vision. This is where SoonerScoop LASIKs.
Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosevich, Josh McCuistion in-house. Welcome to Oklahoma. Welcome home. How are we?
Good. You know, it feels like as soon as I showed up, George just left. And I don't know how to feel about
and he
that.
went to Destin for the second time in a matter of 2 weeks, I believe, as we're getting underway over at spring meetings for the SEC down in Destin, Florida. He'll be reporting on everything that's to come. You can read his story today, talking about the storylines going into SEC spring meetings, as well as a video right here on SoonerScoop.com's YouTube channel, talking everything going into SEC spring meetings. Going to get to catch up with Brent Venables, as well as Porter Moser, G. Baranchek down in Destin, Florida. So that's where we are. It's a Monday evening. Thunder with a big game tonight, game 4. Very nervous about it. I think. Hopefully, with Josh back in the Sooner State, things get better than they were on Saturday, because that was embarrassing.
It would be hard to be worse.
It would be hard to be worse. But on a program that we've continually said it cannot get worse, I'm fearful of saying that for Thunder basketball. All things considered, welcome back to the Recruiting Report. Oklahoma does pick up a defensive line commitment at the end of last week on Friday, I believe, right before we headed into the weekend. Really good get, though. Brian Harris out of Mandarin, Florida. We talked about him, Josh. A good get for Todd Bates on the defensive line.
This is another one. You know, Todd Bates, we talk a lot about the high-profile wins, the David Stones. I think the thing that he's done at Oklahoma more than anything else is finding a way to find players that are good evaluations, that clearly have talent, but also have a lot of upside. There's still so much room for Brian Harris to grow. You watch him on tape, and you see things like, okay, he's still a little too high. There's still all these things he can work on, but he's still dominant. Like, you still watch a player that is playing at a high level against good competition. So, again, I like this guy a lot. I think he's a guy you see on tape a lot play at defensive end. I think he'll slide inside, and I still think there's as he develops and as he gets bigger, stronger, and really works on his technique, I think there's a lot of potential here.
You talked about him, and you did the write-up you can read on SoonerScoop.com, just kind of talking about there's a lot of things to like you just said. When you learn or when you put on his tape from a year ago, his junior tape, one of the first plays is from IMG, so they are going against really good competition. The thing that stuck out to me, 6'4", 290, you would think that height-wise, it's where you want it. He can add that weight as time comes on to get over 300.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Oklahoma's done with some of the body types inside. I mean, guys, look at David Stone.
Sure.
You know, was not at that weight when he arrived and was almost immediately over 300 pounds. Jaden Jackson, same kind of story. So clearly that's a model that Todd Bates, the coaching staff, and then obviously Jerry Schmidt and his staff, they found a good way to make that work for them and really continue to build. I think Grayson Halton is probably the best example. So I don't think there's going to be any problem here. And then again, if you can match that and he still keeps the athleticism and the burst you see, guys, he's a functional pass rusher as defensive end. If you can slide him inside and he can learn to play with the right pad level, he could be that next pass rusher inside for Oklahoma.
As we were talking about the class as a whole, now up to 7 commits. Obviously, we talked about the Jaden O'Neal, the Daniel Odom situation. Maybe that comes to fruition here over the next couple weeks. Bo Bentley will be making that first visit this weekend down to Baton Rouge,
That's
correct?
Right.
And then OU the week after on June 6th.
Yeah, it's all coming to a head. I mean, like, we're all going to – I don't know what we're going to talk about. What's going to be our lead-off for the show for a while. But, yeah, and again, we talked about this a little bit, but I still like what it kind of indicates for me with Bo Bentley in Oklahoma. Like, I think – because, again, he could have given LSU the last crack. Sure. He could have done it that way, and he didn't. And I don't know if that's incredibly telling. I do think LSU has absolutely made this interesting, and I know there's some people out there that think LSU will be the choice, and I don't think that's crazy. But I just think his affinity for Oklahoma, and I think he just knows it a little bit better. He's a little more familiar with Norman and the campus and all those things. I just think that probably wins out in the end. But this is like an old-fashioned recruiting battle that I've covered forever. Like, this isn't the one where, like, oh, yeah, we kind of know what's going to happen here. I think this really could come down to the officials.
We talked about the defensive line, and I know there's still some targets out there. They want to take more defensive tackles, correct, in the 2026 class.
Yeah, no, you look at guys like Tavion Branch, who's coming in, Taj Overton from Owasso. So there are plenty of names still on that list. And actually, we had a story kind of breaking it down. When you start going through it, you're like, wow, there's a lot. The guy that goes forgotten, and honestly, even I fall prey to it, is Elijah Golden, a guy from Virginia. They're bringing actually 2 Virginia defensive linemen over the next few weeks with he and T-Ron. So there's a lot of guys there, and I think they're going to do fine. It's just kind of like we've talked about for a few weeks. It's a matter of who is it? Like, I think that's the most interesting question because there's a lot of ways it could play out.
We talked about T-Ron Richardson last week, I think, on the recruiting report. Let's flip over to the offensive line. There was a top 6 and a name that Oklahoma fans should be familiar with. Drew Evers, the younger brother of Nick Evers, who was at Oklahoma. He named a top 6 in a story that you can read on SoonerScoop.com today. SMU, Texas A&M, Penn State, Ohio State, Oklahoma. All certainly good suitors for a massive, massive human at 6'4", 302.
Yeah, so here's some footage we got a few weeks ago of Drew at the Under Armour camp in Dallas. And, this is a guy, he lines up at tackle a lot. I don't think there's any question for me, Eddie. This guy's probably going to end up as a center and might be like an All-American level center. Like he's that talented. He's a really sharp kid. Obviously, brother plays quarterback. He's been thinking about football forever. And I just think this is a chance. This is actually him going against Kevin Ford, the defensive end that Oklahoma's so heavily involved with. And, Drew just stands him up right there. So this is a guy, like I said, probably about 6'3", maybe 6'3.5", and probably about 285, 290. So it's going to be tough for him to play tackle, which is where he's played for Flower Mound. But once you slide him inside, there's a lot of things you can do with him. Even you could turn him into kind of that athletic pulling guard that we've seen OU use at times. So there's a lot of variety in how he could be useful. But I think the thing that people are going to have to get used to is SMU being on the list of these guys in the Dallas area. They're a contender here. Obviously, they already got Toa Katoa.
I was going to say they've already rated Oklahoma for one.
Yep. So it's I think people would kind of look at that and say, well, one of these things is not like the other. Well, that's not the case anymore.
Sure.
Like, SMU is going to be real.
Plenty of money and already into a Power 4 conference.
Absolutely.
Made a college football playoff last year, as strange as it may be for Rhett Lashley's group. Another top 6 that was announced, that the write-up for Drew Evers you can read from Steve Wiltfong. This one as well, I believe it was from Chad Simmons on the website today on on3.com. Craig Dandridge, a wide receiver out of Milton, Georgia, on 300 wide receiver, certainly a talented wide receiver, and really good teams like Drew Evers in the mix for him. Florida, Georgia, Georgia Tech, OU, Stanford, and Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. Now, he's a guy, you've got to give OU a lot of credit. They were in on him pretty early. Sure. They identified him pretty early on. That was a guy that I think even really predating the Jim Nagy, as they start to find their guys around the country. This, I think, was an Emmett Jones guy really from the word go. And I mean, Eddie, you talk about it. Big, long athlete, really explosive speed when you watch him on tape. So there's a ton of stuff that makes sense here. He's and that you mentioned the story with Steve Wiltfong. He's talking about taking an official visit on June 20th for the barbecue. Okay. So now I don't think that's been finalized, but I think that's kind of what they're looking at. And it's another chance for OU to kind of get the last shot at somebody. And if that happens, then hey, something crazy could happen. That's not what I would expect to play out. But, again, you never are mad to have kind of the last word.
And it certainly seems like here over the next couple weeks, you're looking at 2 real big visit dates in Dorman. Yeah. June 6th, obviously, with Bo Bentley and crew, and then June 20th for the barbecue is going to be kind of those 2 weekends here in June, sandwiched between a lot of Brent Venables football camps. There's going to be a ton going on in Dorman.
Yeah, we're not going to be bored around here. It is funny, Eddie, because we talked a little bit about the quarterback situation. You got Bo Bentley coming on June 6th. Jaden O'Neal is supposed to come in on June 20th.
Sure.
It's such a confusing situation. Like, I don't know exactly how to read into that. And we talked about it last week with Bo Bentley moving that thing forward. You've got to think he's going to have his choice by June 20th.
Right.
Does he come back? Like, it would be the first time. Like,
Oklahoma would certainly hope that he would.
Yeah, so say it's Oklahoma and Jaden O'Neal maintains his official visit. To my knowledge, that'll be the first time those two had been on campus at the same time. We don't know what that looks like. Like
it's all
very interesting.
It's all been so intertwined here over the last, really basically the last 2 months,
Absolutely.
3 months, really since Oklahoma got active with Bo Bentley when Ben Arbuckle came to town. Everything does coincide. The reason that you're here is for the OKPreps tour, and everything's kind of firing up here over the next couple of days. You're going to be going literally across the state from region to region, seeing all these guys. I got out last week and saw Washington, Oklahoma, which I think is going to become a mainstay. Obviously, Nate Roberts from a year ago ends up at Ohio State, but a number of guys, and we can start with 2027. I guess, are we going to call him an athlete? Because I think that there's interest on both sides of the football, obviously, with Case Alexander, the younger son of Steven Alexander. His brother, Coop, ended up at Iowa State a year ago. Sounds like things went pretty well through the spring. We're still working on a little bit of a shoulder surgery, is what I was told when I saw Washington a week ago at Noble. But you see Case Alexander running around, and you can tell why there are a number of schools getting very active with him, even going into his junior season.
I think anybody that's telling Case that he's going to, he might play tight end is largely about, if that's what Case wants to do, we're going to say yes.
Sure.
Like, he's just super talented. But I think when you talk to people at Washington, when I watch him on tape, I see a linebacker, Eddie.
Yeah.
He plays with some violence. He is... look at him. He's a big, long kid. He kind of looks almost like a stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker kind of guy, like an edge player. So I think you could do a ton with him. But again, he's one of those guys, and we talked about it. At times during Nate Roberts' recruitment, at times during Cooper Alexander's recruitment, I don't think Oklahoma did all the things they needed to do.
Sure.
I don't get the impression that they're letting that happen again.
Yeah.
I think they've been very active. He was up for some spring practices. He's been around. I think they are trying to make sure he knows what a priority he is, because we've talked about it. In that 2027 class, it's loaded in Oklahoma. They know they've got to hit their marks, and he is one of those guys where you say, you can't let him go somewhere else. You got to make that work.
Is there some talk, too, and just because he's so athletic, that maybe he could fit into the cheetah role at Oklahoma?
I wouldn't rule anything out, because, again, you watch him move, and it's just – you have to kind of remind yourself that he's 6'2", 6'3". Yeah. It's so easy and fluid. I would say he's not as – natural a pass catcher as Coop was, but probably a little bit more explosive athletically. And so there is, again, what that's a guy just dropping in coverage. At 195 pounds, he's going to be just finished. When you saw this, he hadn't even quite finished his sophomore year of high school. So
there's also a lot of it just seems like just watching him, and we go out to these team camps all the time, and you notice little things. He really wants to get after the contact with guys, which leads me to think that maybe the defensive side of the ball is where he's a little bit more comfortable almost.
Eddie, I remember going to see him because I was going to see Coop going into his senior year, and it was right as Case was starting his freshman year at Washington. It was the same team camp you were at. And I go out and see him, and I'm like, where's little Case? I've got this mind of what I'm going to see. And it was something out of a bad football movie where he just all of a sudden, as I'm talking to the coach about him, he pops this guy out in the flat, and you're like, oh, okay. And I kind of was like, does he like defense? And he goes, oh, yeah, he likes defense a lot. And so, I just think that's kind of – he's breaking – I don't know if Steven is accepting of this.
Yeah, the Alexander gene at the tight end position might be over.
Yeah, it may not be okay, but, again, you can watch him. Every chance he can get to put a shoulder in, he's going to take it.
Certainly seems like somebody that I know that the coaches down at Washington said that Michigan was going to be by here later on in the week, or at the beginning of this week, I guess, to see Case Alexander. He's not the only guy, though, over at Washington, and you can see why they won a 2A state championship a year ago. I think they're going to be probably the odds-on favorite again this year, and a reason for that is 2028 quarterback Creed Barrett, and he's a name that it seems like has been around the recruiting circles for a long time, but he played yet last year as a freshman. He's expected to be the starter again this year, and it certainly looks like somebody that if he had a little bit more growing to do from a height standpoint, he'll have a offer list that is a who's who of college football.
Well, Eddie, you remember we went down there for that spring practice a couple years ago to watch Coop and Nate as well. And we were, I don't know why I keep saying Coop. I say Coop a lot.
I said Coop.
Yeah, I think it's in my brain
right
now. Yeah. But anyway, so we go down there, and I remember talking to one of the coaches. They're showing us around the facilities, and they're like, we got this young guy. You got to see him. And you're just kind of like, okay, like a couple years. And then he starts as a freshman and takes Washington State title. And you're like, okay, now we all know who that guy is.
Sure.
And you're right, though. Like, you watch him and, like, the maturity he plays with, like, and again, like, just looking at him, like, is he a young guy? Sure. But he's not, like, poorly put together. You're not like, oh, man, if he takes one hit from Case Alexander, it's over. Like, it's not that way. But he does, like, obviously you'd like him to grow a little bit. You'd like him to be in that 6 foot. But, I mean, you look at the body type, and again, I just want to be careful. I'm not saying he's going to be this kind of player, but it kind of reminds you of what I'm guessing Baker looked like at a similar age. Like that same kind of, he's kind of stocky. He's kind of bigger in the lower half. Like you're like, okay, this guy will be fine. But, I mean, look at him just slinging it.
They feel like the arm talent matches up with just about, not just in the state of Oklahoma, but anybody nationally in that 2028 group.
Well, I want to say to the people watching this right now, I'm watching it for the first time, too. So, like, I'm taking this in. Like, I knew Eddie went and shot it, but I haven't had a chance to watch it. And just watching some of this stuff, like, look at his placement there where he's leading Case up the field. That's the difference in, you make a 7-yard completion, or you make a 7-yard completion and you've got your P4 tight end running up the field against a bunch of high school kids. Like,
pray for the rest of 2A this year, because those two are extremely good at that level of football here in the state of Oklahoma. And then you add in another name in Josiah Dickerson, who jumped onto the scene with us a year ago at about this time at Brent Venables football camp. And I think that we had the same conversation in terms of, okay, who's this guy? Is he going to be a junior in high school, senior in high school? It's like, no, he's going to be a freshman at Washington High School. Josiah Dickerson, probably more so on the running back side of things. They are going to play him a little bit on the defensive back group, but certainly he could put up whatever numbers he wants in the backfield this year.
Yeah, when we saw him at camp, there were two kids that I hadn't seen, like I had not seen in person before, so I didn't know what they looked like. I mistook him for a junior kid from Houston, a kid named Wayne Shanks that now holds an offer. And I remember being like, holy crap, who is this guy? But yeah, I mean, like, you can watch him here, like, quick feet. He's going to be a real problem. And he's one of those guys that, like, in the state that I don't think people are talking a lot about now, because there's so much focus on Case. There's so much focus on on Creed. But now you're like, this kid's going to go run for 1,800 yards and be an absolute problem.
He's going to put up, it just feels like he's going to put up a bunch of numbers, and then they're going to go, oh, by the way, he didn't play a whole lot of fourth quarters this year.
Yeah, because he won't. Like, I mean, absolutely.
It might end up being a pretty special group down there at Washington, a place just not too far from Norman, just down the road, basically, down by Goldsby, that I think recruiters and then people that cover recruiting like ourselves, we're going to be going down to Washington quite a bit over the next couple years.
It reminds me of, I remember years ago going to Muskogee, who'd been down for a long time, and I go to a practice, and they've got Jonte Bumpus, and they've got Stacy McGee, who obviously played in the NFL for a long time, Jameel Owens, and I was like, I'm going to be here a lot the next few years. Like that's what Washington feels like right now. It just, like, there's no way they're not going to have a lot of attention.
As for the rest of the week, you're up here and going to be heading out tomorrow on Tuesday boarding to check out a bunch of high schools. I know that we talked about the trip coming up this Wednesday to go to Fort Gibson to see Cooper Hackett, who we've talked about, possibly one of the better offensive linemen coming out of the state here in the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah, I will say somebody fact checked me when I talked about the top ranked offensive lineman. We left off Bray Walker.
Okay,
so not maybe the connection everybody's like. I don't think that's the comparison everybody's hoping for. But again, Cooper is he's a different player. Like, but I would say I am just very intrigued because offensive line and corner are probably the two positions where I want to see you in person the most, because I can watch you move on tape, I can see things, but when I can watch you slide your feet, I can watch how much bounce you have in your pass sets, that kind of stuff, I just get a different feel. Like, and I'm not saying like me, that's anybody. It's just a very unique thing that you want to watch, and I think at that point we can really have that conversation of like, okay, maybe we're a little over our skis on Cooper right now, or oh, God, this guy's going to be a top 10 player in the country kind of thing.
As for, I mean, we got to mention Owasso. We were just talking about the defensive line group. Taj Overton, get another chance to see him. And, when you do talk about guys that are probably underrated for the state of Oklahoma, or maybe even on the national scene, Taj Overton certainly would fit that bill.
Because, and again, Eddie, we're getting to that point, and I've talked about this before with back in the 2000s when Brent Venables would tell me, like he'd offer a linebacker, you're like, okay, linebacker can play. And I know that, like, for everybody, like, well, Todd Bates has clearly been good for a long time, but now I've gotten to see Todd Bates and watch him develop and all that. Like, if Todd Bates says a guy can play and he's serious about a guy, that dude's a good player. Taj Overton is not 6'4". He's not the most explosive athlete I've ever watched, but he's a good football player. And I think sometimes that gets overlooked in this era where we're so measurables and traits and that kind of stuff. Taj Overton may never be the David, like, doesn't have the Davidson upside. But, God, Eddie, it reminds me a lot of the same conversation we were having about Jaden Jackson 2 years ago. We're like, well, he's just really steady and good. And then you're like, oh, God, he's an All-American as a like it may just be I'm an idiot not seeing it as well as I should.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens. What about Rejoice Christian? I know you're going to get by there, as well as Broken Arrow.
Yep.
Make it all the hotspot stops that you do, that we do here over the last, I think, really best decade, basically.
Yep.
Maybe more so than that. Stillwater High School also has a couple guys that Oklahoma has offered. Absolutely.
So going to go by Rejoice Christian. They do not have an Oklahoma offer. They've got a wide receiver in the 26 class, Xavier Okwafulezi. I think I'm going to say that wrong.
You better than I.
Yeah. So big, long guy, like 6'4", runs really well. I think he's only played for a couple of years. Like, I think he's kind of a basketball guy that's come over, and he looks outstanding. He's got, Arkansas. I think he's got a Tennessee offer. He's got like probably 15 really solid P4 offers. So I don't know that he's going to be an OU guy, but I would say also on their roster is Camion Compton-Nero. Very good basketball player, played for that Rejoice Christian. That's a really good basketball team as well. Like 6'1", 180 as a corner. He's just going to be a sophomore next year.
Interesting.
He is a real contender for the best sophomore in the state. Like that, watching his tape.
We've talked about the 27 group.
Yep.
Get ready to start talking about the 28
exactly.
group.
It just never rests. And so he's one of the best sophomores I've seen in the state. So I'm really anxious to get my first look at him, kind of measure him up, just see if it's as good as I think it is. But based on what I know now, he's in that conversation.
Should be a really packed week here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel, as well as SoonerScoop.com. Good time to sign up. Softball starting the Women's College World Series, 5th straight national championship possibility for Patty Gasso's group after they run through Alabama over the weekend at the Super Regionals. OU Baseball gets their assignment today, headed out to Chapel Hill. They will start on Friday at 4 o'clock against Nebraska. Not the easiest regional selection, but anytime that you got a pitching staff like Oklahoma does, led by Kyson Witherspoon, it at least gives you a chance.
Eddie, I would ask you, how do you line that up? Do you throw Kyson game one?
No, I think they'll go like Malachi Witherspoon or maybe Kate Crossland in the first game, and then you just hope that you can get through Nebraska, who had to have a little bit of help, even though they won the Big Ten tournament. You hope you get through Nebraska, and then that sets up the monster matchup on Saturday in a winner's bracket, likely against North Carolina, who is coming in as maybe one of the hottest teams in the country right now, as they made their way through the ACC. So I would expect Kyson to pitch the second game.
That's what makes sense to me, but I wondered if I was being crazy.
No, I think that was kind of like the big question mark today. We talked to Skip Johnson. You can read about it on SoonerScoop.com. It does seem like Dayton Taki will be back playing the infield after coming back off of the IL. I mean, he's literally 4 weeks removed from breaking his ankle. I can't believe that he actually DH'd while they were in Hoover last week. Kind of crazy, but we'll see. I mean, they got the talent. They got the arms that can get them through a regional and possibly into a super regional. We'll see, though. Good time. Long story short, good time to be joining SoonerScoop.com right now. Josh and Andrew West will be all over the roads. I'll be joining them out there. Carrie's going to be joining us out there as well for the rest of the week here. And that's going to do it for Recruiting Report. Josh, good to have you in studio. Welcome back to Oklahoma.
Hopefully not the last time this week.
It seems like every time you come up for this, it just coincides with rain in May.
Yes.
It's always, they go hand in hand here.
It was the thing I was most excited about is I wasn't flying in with half the softball world. Like that, usually it feels like I am right there, like sitting next to Florida State fans on the rental car bus. So
you beat them to the punch. They'll be coming, I'm sure, probably on Tuesday, Wednesday, to get back up to the Sooner State. For Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll see you back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.